Anybody here I know? Might be a few. I know a few in jail couldn't be here. I know that bum. I say that with affection. All my good friends sound like that guy that owned the saloon in New York. If you loved him, he called them bums. A little bit like him, Bruce Newton and his wife. All right, here we are. I won't even look around. All the faces too tight because I know a lot of you. This is a rather big night for the museum in the direction it's going. As you know, in about 24 hours, not quite, Bruce, but in a few weeks, couple months, we'll be celebrating our 10th anniversary. Mr. Newton over there will tell you more about it. I was one of the founding members. I am so proud that we have in Chicago a museum. Now, New York has a fine museum, too. And I like to say, the hell with New York, let's have our own fine museum. And I know we do. I don't think we do. We do. So this is one of, I think, some other events you will see in this 10th anniversary year. And it's especially heartwarming to me because the lady who's going to come in a few moments is a very dear lady to me, a young lady then when I was a young man, a star at ABC. My memories of her are too much for me to dwell upon and tell you because it would take me an hour and a half. Rich Samuels will tell you a little bit more when he comes in and introduces her. But I think you're in for a delightful, memory-ridden, memory-stricken, memory fulfillment evening of early television in almost its infancy. So with that, I'm going to not dwell anymore on Mary because you hear all about her tonight. Just came in a moment ago and gave her a big hug and a kiss, and I'll talk to her later because I haven't seen her for a long time. But the gentleman who's going to introduce Mary Hartline is a guy named Rich Samuels. I asked for his biography from Carrie Odell, and I got about 2 paragraphs. I don't know what to think of that. Maybe he was in jail in Kansas City at a time we didn't know about, in St. Louis, and some other things we have to dig into that, or else he's excessively modest. Rich Samuels is a correspondent for WTTW Channel 11's Chicago Tonight Show. And from 1973 to 1990, he was a reporter for Channel 5. He holds a Ph.D. in Italian Renaissance history from U of C, Chicago. But in recent years, he has turned his attention to the history of radio and television. And that's all. I can't believe it. Rich, either you are hiding something from us, or you are exceedingly modest. But knowing Rich somewhat, pretty well, I'll pronounce him guilty of excessive modesty. He has one more thing on this little piece of paper that I think is highly interesting to those of you who are becoming victimized by the internet and the World Wide Web, and surfing all over that goddamn thing, and waiting for the thing to light up when it come through. When it doesn't come through, it's a pain in the you-know-what, but right now I hope it'll improve. But he has a website, worldwide website, called Broadcasting in Chicago, 1921 to 1989. It's accessible on the internet at, boy, the website is a tough one to recall you. It's www.mcs.net/ some kind of a slash in there. Rich Sam Slant. You better see him personally and get it down on paper. But I'm looking forward to a wonderful reunion evening for a lovely lady whom I have loved professionally in all my years of broadcasting. We're having a grand reunion tonight, and you will have a reunion with her, Mary Hartline, and Rich Samuels, the modest guy, will come up here and tell you more about her.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Quinlan. I have to call you Mr. Quinlan because I believe I was only 8 years old when I read your novel, The Merger, one of the great stories that sort of foretold the beginning of the end of television. And if you can still find a copy, it's worth reading. I am here because, for two reasons. I practice television today, and I'm also a historian. And those of us, and I think there are some of my colleagues who practice television today in the room here, and when we look at the recordings of the few that have survived from television in Chicago in the earliest days, I think we're absolutely amazed. How in the world could they possibly have done it? We feel that we couldn't really have even walked in the door getting a job in the mailroom or as a janitor at that time, because these were spectacular people who really invented a medium. And there was a very, very brief period in Chicago that began, say, in the first week of January of 1949, when the coaxial cable between New York and Chicago was completed, and ended barely 4 or 5 years later, during which most, if not, well, I can't say all, but most of the really creative, new, novel stuff that was being done on television was being done here in Chicago. And when you look back at that era and try to remember the people who were involved in that, there is one name that surely sticks out in everybody's mind. One name that you could not fail to include in any history of that era. And that is the woman that we honor tonight. Let's welcome now, back to Chicago after too long an absence, Mary Pauline Hartline. I know that there are some people here that maybe you should acknowledge apart from Red Quinlan. I think there are at least 2 people I know who worked your show Super Circus here. Do you see anybody here that you recognize?
Well, it's so hard to kind of see here, but Bruce Newton, yes, I certainly do. And I know Frank Merkel, but lights so bright.
Is Harry Siegel, is he here?
Oh, for goodness sakes, yes. Hello. And
there's from this. I don't know your name, but you were a stagehand on the show?
Right, Eddie Klein.
oh, of course, the light is so bright, but I can certainly remember you. Certainly do. And Wendy Widget.
Let me tell you how I would like to, as we proceed here, I would like to do this interactively to get people in the audience drawn in as quickly as possible. And what I want to start with is, who here remembers the Super Circus Open? Because get up, come up to the microphone. We're going to have to put the microphone back in the stand there because I don't know how to get it in. This is the show that really brought you to the attention of the nation. It came on ABC television, again, within days after the coaxial cable was completed. It was the first week of January of 1949, and it remained on the air until December of 1955.
Oh.
And
we were on until 58.
Well, 55 with Super Circus, and then on the network, and then you came back, I believe, later with Princess Mary's Magic Castle. But someone get up and describe for us how that show opened, because this is one of the great all-time show opens. Who wants to do it? All right. In the absence of anyone who wants to get up and describe it, we have a clip that shows the show open. This, by the way, dates from March 14th of 1954. You have to pretend it's 4 o'clock Central Time, March 14th of 1954.
This is ABC Television Network.
Hello, all you wonderful people. Hey, are you ready for your Super Circus fun? Oh, boy, I love to hear you cheer that way because you sound so happy. And you know, when you're happy, that makes your old pappy happy too. Oh, yes, it does. And say, your pappy likes you to be happy. Oh, yeah, that's why I'm going to let you meet all the wonderful star acts about this, your Super Circus. And, wait, before I do, let me ask you just one question. Now, what is the greatest name in cereal? Oh, you're right, you're absolutely right. So we're all ready, we're all set. So strike up the band. Here comes the grand entrance. First we have Bruce Chase and the Super Circus Band. Joe Hotchini and Company. Freddie Canacelli. Patina and Rosa. Miss Betty Pasco. Then there's my pal Champion McGee. And last but not least, lovely Mary Hartline. Yes, sirree, boys and girls. Those are the acts that are going to entertain you on Super Circus today. So step right up, step right in. There's room for all. There's fun for all. And the whole gang here to... Hey, there goes the whistle. So come on, let's go. Our ringmaster, Mr. Claude Kirshner, says it's time to start the show. So come on.
Now, March.
That was...
Tell me about some of the people that we saw in that clip, because these are some people who really themselves embody the whole history of Chicago broadcasting, not just television, but going back to radio. Beginning with the first, who was probably the oldest of the old timers on that show. I'm talking about Cliffy the Clown. Tell me who was he?
Well, Cliff Sabir was one of a very, very great actor. He was older than the rest of us because he was way back in vaudeville, I understand. And he did a lot of radio, and he was a great, great actor. He could even do Shakespeare, believe it or not. And he was just superb. And then Claude, of course, the ringmaster, he was just a wonderful person. Everybody that knew him just adored him. He was just like a brother. We were like brothers and sisters, really. And he was a Parker at one time. He told me that in 1934, here in Chicago, when remember they had I think they had it, my mother and father came to it, I was young at that
World's
time.
Fair.
Uh-huh. And he did lots and lots of radio and, just everything. And of course, this was a different clown that you have on there. That isn't the original one. This is the one that was later. And his name was Dobrich. And his father was, he did all the booking for the shows and everything, which, by the way, he did such a good job with all the European acts for the Super Circus that Ed Sullivan kept saying, well, you know that show in Chicago, that Super Circus is getting all of our good acts, or getting better acts, why can't we get them? So Sasha Dobrich, the booker, said, well, you got him first for our Chicago and Super Circus. Well, I never will forget Ed Sullivan. He just had a fit about it. So anyway, that made it kind of notorious too. So then later on, when we went off there, then Ed Sullivan had a lot of acts that we had, including he never could have Clyde Beatty never did do his show. We did our show, which is good for Chicago, I always say, my hometown.
Just to again give you an idea of the broadcasting history involved in that show, and just to go back to Cliff Sabir, Cliffy the Clown, who you see breaking through the drum there. He was born literally born in a trunk. His parents were vaudevillians. He was actually Canadian, born in Hamilton, Ontario. And in Chicago, in the very early days of network radio at NBC, he was one of the contract players on the First Nighter show. He appeared on an almost weekly basis, playing character roles on the same show the star of which was Don Amici. And at the same time, or a little bit later, he was working over at WLS doing a blackface routine, or what would have been a blackface routine had there been television, appearing as a character by the name of Old Pappy on a program sponsored by Swift, and Swift bought a tremendous amount of time on that show. And you hear in the beginning of the show where he says, if you're happy, your old pappy's happy. Well, that's a reference to that old character from years and years before. He was a tremendously talented person. You can hear that deep, resonant voice.
He was wonderful. We were all together, and I was just talking to some friends here that I said we'd been together all those years, and we never ever had an argument, and everything, of course, in those days were live, and it was great, and we didn't even have, we always called them idiot cards. We didn't have idiot cards. We didn't have teleprompters. When you went on, and that was it, and we did our own commercials, which was, Kellogg was with us for years, and Canada Dry Ginger Ale, and Mars Candies, and we did all of our commercials ourselves live. And I can see somebody I know very well out here that I'm very fond of, and Bruce Newton, and he knows that too. When he did my daytime show with Windy Widget, he did all the puppetry and everything, and Ronnie Burns with the voice, and everything then was live too. We did all the commercials, everything. Television has changed; it's much easier.
I'm going to turn the clock back even a little bit further, because Super Circus was the program that really brought you to the nation, because it was carried live over the network, which at that time went no further west than St. Louis and Omaha, and a week later kinescope recordings were shown in the Mountain and Pacific Zone, that until 51. And by the way, in 1951, the very first, when the Coast to Coast network was finally completed, and you could get all the way from Chicago, from New York to Los Angeles, the very first show that went on the full Coast to Coast network from Chicago was on another Sunday afternoon version of Super Circus. But I want to go back to the very earliest days, in fact, the earliest days, moment one of Channel 7 in Chicago, the night of September 17th of 1948, when WENR-TV went on the air for the first time. Do you know who the first real person that people saw on that channel?
Well,
That night when they after they dropped the test pattern, and you have to remember now their one studio was over in the old Civic Theater, the Civic Opera House, this smaller theater right next to the Civic Opera House. In fact, it was the theater from which Super Circus came. They dropped the test pattern, and it went to black, and then when they faded up, there was a woman with a baton conducting the ABC Chicago Orchestra in the overture, and that was you.
Well, the way it first started, the way we opened the ABC network before we went into any of the television shows was I led the opening overture at the Civic Opera Building, and Paul Whiteman led the finale. Mm-hmm. That's the way we did open the network to begin with. And of course, Ed Noble, who was the owner of ABC, he owned Lifesavers. He came in from New York, and all of the big league people came in from New York to see it. But Chicago was the originating of opening the whole ABC network. Came right from here, not New York.
Mm-hmm. And that program, by the way, I have from the paper that night. This is from one of the papers. Look who you'll see on WENR-TV tonight. These are the people who appeared. Some of the people who appeared on that inaugural broadcast: Don McNeil, Bob Elson, Clark Dennis, Aunt Fanny, of course, Fran Allison, Earl Wild, the pianist, Beulah Carney, who you may remember for many years, Tom Moore, Jenny Sims, Tommy Bartlett, the Harmonicettes, the Honey Dreamers, Margaret Harris, a 4-year-old prodigy who's somewhat older now, Victor Borga, Jack Owens, Paul Harvey, Sam Cowling, Patsy Lee, Herbie Mintz, Jerry Colonna, and the Dean of Modern American Music, Paul Whiteman, conducting Rhapsody in Blue. That was a live program in this theater which seated 892 people. And the program lasted 4 hours and 52 minutes. That was all live. And the amazing thing is that nobody on that crew had ever done a television program, a live television program, before. So it was being done for the very first time. And Variety noted in the following week that, well, it was a little bit long and there were some things that were kind of rough, but they thought that the lens work, and I wish I could remember the Variety speak for that, but I can't. That they say, particularly in the Rhapsody in Blue, that was very, very good.
That's what I led with. The opening overture was the Three Musketeers, and the finale was, of course, Paul Whiteman, who always did Rhapsody in Blue. And I can remember rehearsal quite well, which was rather interesting, that had the big stage there, and during rehearsal, and I adored Pops Whiteman, but he had this very long baton, and he'd get up there, and he had a big orchestra, and he gave the downbeat, and all of a sudden, he looked up and he says, "Stop everything." He says, "The camera's not on me." He says, "The camera's not on me. Stop the camera." This is during rehearsal. Well, this went on hour after hour. And he was a wonderful person, but I still remember the very long baton, and when he went through the air, it sounded like he was cracking a whip or something. But that was when the growth of it. But that was the same night, and that was what he did, of course, Rhapsody Blue, because that was his more or less theme song all of his life. So there's a lot of marvelous things that we went through in those days. But you know, we were talking about starring in television too, and then was Dick York when I first started in radio.
Yeah, I wanted to turn back the clock even further.
Right.
And go back. You know, we're going to be.
Where are you starting here?
You tell me when I've gone back.
Going backwards?
When I've gone back too far.
No, well, I
But-
thought we were going to start at the first, so I guess I got mixed up.
Back in, I want to go back. I have a listing here from the Chicago Tribune, the radio listings from February 2nd of 1946. Now, this is before there is commercial television in Chicago. WBKB, which at that time was on Channel 4, had come on the air in 1941. Its activities were very sporadic and curtailed during the war because they were really training radio operators at 190 North State Street rather than broadcasters. But here's a listing from the paper. It's a Saturday morning on February 2nd, 1946, a program that in Chicago is being carried on WCFL, but is actually being originated by the ABC network. A program called Teen Town.
That's correct. That
New
one I was
Bobby
starting
Sox
at the
series.
beginning.
It's called a new Bobby Sox series. Now,
Well, we were all teenagers on it. We had I had 22 musicians, which were all the American Broadcasting Company musicians. They even had the Fine Arts Quartet in it. And they've traveled all over the world since then. And this was in February 2nd, 1946. It was my first broadcast. It was network radio. And everybody on it was first called Teen Town. And then later on we called it Junior Junction because a very dear friend of mine had later on, who I met, Betty McMahon in New York, had something on in New York called Teen Timers or something like that. So we changed our name to Junior Junction because it was for just, everybody was teenagers. And Dick York was the MC of the program. And he went on and went into Bewitched, as I'm sure you all know, which was a great television show, Bewitched with Robert Montgomery's daughter. And so everything just started from there. And did you know that Super Circus was originally, they kind of, before this television started, was going to be, they thought, well, we'd do something like this and put it on radio. Well, we even rehearsed, and in those days, the Breakfast Club was in Studio A, and we were in Studio B, and that was at the Merchandise Mart Fair where all the broadcasting came from at that time. And so, on the 19th floor. And so all this came out of there, and then later on, I was just trying to remember, because I'm confused here, because I was trying to go from radio and back to answer a part into television,
first of
where
all,
we all
should-
went into
should explain-
television.
People might wonder, well, what is ABC doing over at the Merchandise Mart? But that's NBC. Well, the reality is, when the ABC
Red
network
Blue.
was formed in 1943, they didn't have their own studio facilities. You couldn't, in wartime, go out and build a new building for it, so ABC, once it was split off from the NBC Blue Network, leased space in the Merchandise Mart, and that's why you were there.
Well, the reason for it was the Red and the Blue Network then went from ABC to NBC, but I think it had to do a lot with the FCC.
Yeah. Now, on that program, this program was really set in a town where everybody was a teenager, or where the teenagers sort of ran the town, was it not?
No, not exactly. Well, I did led the orchestra, and Dick York was first with the MC, and we had different skits on it, and we had.
But you were you directed the orchestra, did you?
Yes.
Not?
Mm-hmm.
You were called. It was called Mary Hartline and her 22 Men of Melody.
That's right.
We have one of them, Mr. Siegel back there. You played that show, did you not?
I did. I played Mary from the beginning to the end. Magic Castle.
Do you have any specific recollections
That art scene?
of that show?
That's just the organist. I'm the bass player, Harold.
Yes, I know. That's what I thought. I've got the light mind because I knew that, of course.
But Arsene did play organ there too, but we added the bass player. But I was there from Junior Junction
Yes, he did the bass in the orchestra. And it was in the with Rex Moffin's Orchestra ABC network. That was a whole. He could just. They were just wonderful.
There were some
men.
great, some other names that you remember. Eddie Ballantyne, who went on to lead the Breakfast Club Orchestra,
Oh, he
played in
was
that
the
group,
leader.
and Ralph Martiri, who had his own
Oh, he's the
band.
first trumpet, and we had Jimmy Zito was the trumpet player in there too. Was married to June Haver, who was later married to Fred McMurray, and Bruce Chase was the
Players in the Milwaukee Symphony now.
Am I glad you're there? Because I always like to be corrected if I'm wrong. And it was the Fine Arts Quartet was played in that. Am I right?
Right.
They were marvelous. They played all over the world, and
Yes,
it was
the
just
Fine Arts Quartet. We had a wonderful group of musicians at ABC.
Oh,
and
fabulous.
the Fine Arts Quartet got their good start right after the war. They were on staff, and Rex Moffin was very good to them and allowing them to go out on concert dates as far as Australia, and come back to still be on staff. And they were a wonderful asset to the orchestra.
Yes. Oh,
We had
but
some
it's-
wonderful players throughout the.
I think that you can say that throughout the shops in Chicago, in a way, thank God for James C. Petrillo and the iron hand he had, there was always very, very high quality music
Right.
on the radio in Chicago, and that served as an inspiration for many of us who were not musicians ourselves, but music lovers.
Yes, we had 3 staffs in Chicago, ABC, CBS, and NBC, and all of them had wonderful orchestras there.
Absolutely. What's the lady want right there? What, do you have a question?
Perhaps you don't remember, but my name is Lorraine Kilbera,
Oh,
and I was a secretary to your husband, Harold Stokes, for many years. And we are all looking at you today, but I remember the day when he walked in and was pacing the floor and said, "I have a great idea for a show, and no one will listen to me." He was very upset because New York, they wouldn't listen to him, and it took him a year and a half. And when you walked into our office with Frances Dixon, remember her?
Oh yes, she was great.
Right. It
Took
was
a
there
moment.
and then that he said out loud to us all, "I'm going to make this girl a star." And he really
very
did. He
young.
worked very hard,
Oh,
and
yes.
he got you to where you're going, and we were very happy with it. Good luck to you.
Thank you so much. It's very kind.
Let me
I
just
had
read
to
you
study.
one.
It didn't come easy. I studied the music, and I remember getting up in front of the orchestra. Mr. Siegel will remember this. And of course, I was really was very young. I was 16 or 17, and here are all these fabulous musicians. You know, the worldwide musicians, and I just came and I thought, well. So I studied and studied, and I conducted and everything, which in an article you put that I don't lead no music. You asked Mr. Siegel, I did conduct. You asked him all of it. So then one day Ralph Martiri, the trumpet player, said, "Oh, by the way," that's just the way he said it. I'm down here in front of the orchestra, you know, scared to death anyway, very young. And he says, "Oh," he says, "Miss Hartline," he says, "what key are we in?" Well, here's the scores, you know, they're for all these musicians and everything else. And finally, I looked at him, and it was very frightening. I said, "Well, if you don't know what key we're in, I don't know what you're doing in this orchestra." That was the only thing I could think of to say. I was scared to death because I was sure I didn't know. But I tell you what I did do. It was frightening because, as you know, I'm sure you all know that the scores are so big and everything, and they have, you know what, key, sharp, flats, and everything. That day was I went and I got myself and I was with Rex Moffin, the conductor too, and he got me somebody, a professor, and I studied all the keys, and the next time I knew it, I said, "We're in the D sharp," or "We're in C sharp." I was so proud of myself, but it taught me a good lesson, but I'm glad I had that first answer first, because I would have been sunk.
Let me just go back a little bit further into the past, about a year before that show came on the air, and then we'll get back to look at some more Super Circus. But this is a newspaper clip I pulled out from the Hillsborough Journal. This is the paper in Hillsborough, Illinois, from May 31st of 1945. And there's a picture of you, and it says, "Miss Mary Hartline went to Chicago yesterday, where she'll be employed as a photographer's model and will soon begin her duties in the field. She is a very attractive young lady and will be most successful in her chosen endeavor. Miss Hartline was recently employed by the Chicago Tribune when she posed professionally with a little 3-year-old girl for an article in the paper on child psychology. She said had several attractive offers, but found it necessary to complete her work at Hillsborough Community High School, where she was graduated a few days ago. She is the younger of 2 daughters of Postmaster and Mrs. Paul Hartline of this city, She has many friends here who wish her much success in the work she has chosen to do. Now, when you left Hillsborough in '45, did you figure that you were going to be on radio and TV?
Well, that was the plan, and we were talking about it, and I almost forgot about that. I was asked to come up here, and older people probably might not, but at the Tribune, who was the head of the color studio for years, was Eddie Johnson. He was the greatest photographer, and he did all the covers for the well, the thing is called the pictorial of the big color section for the Tribune on Sundays or something. They had the coverage of the people that spent some time ago. So they asked me to come up, and at that age, I was on the cover of the pictorial of the Tribune, and because I'd won a thing at the high school for a Queen of Love and Beauty, and that isn't a beauty bathing suit thing. You have to wait 12 years when you're going through school. Then the town elects you to be the Queen of Love and Beauty, and that was my trip to Chicago. That's how it started. So then he took this picture, which was in the archive someplace. It's awful talking about yourself. I'm not good at this. But you asked me, I know, but it's very difficult. But he did have it. This Eddie Johnson, I'm sure a lot of people at the Tribune know, because he did all the top people all over the world came in just to be lucky enough to have their colored picture on the color thing. And that's how it started. And then, of course, I'd go back and finish school. My goodness, I was in the senior year. That's what I was in at. The break was at during Christmas or Thanksgiving or something. So then this all came about, and then it just kind of started from there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Another artifact from the days when you were doing modeling work was in July 8th of 1947. Look magazine had your picture on the cover. And this is what it looks like. Now I'm going to ask.
Oh, I forgot all about that.
Now I'm going to ask you, what is wrong with this picture, apart from the fact that when I copied it, the color balance got off? There's something wrong with the picture.
Younger.
For whatever reason, and I think when I showed this to you a couple years ago, your mother noticed this, that for some reason they flipped the negative over, and so it's a mirror image of you.
I wouldn't even know. I didn't know it. I didn't know.
Well, let's jump forward to the future, or not to the future, but back to 1954, almost 7 years after that picture was taken. And I want to look again at another clip from Super Circus that I think illustrates at least three things about the show. First of all, in the first part of this segment, you're going to see Mary dealing with young kids who were involved in a competition in this show, and I think it's very instructive to see the way that you handled the kids, because they're in a very threatening situation potentially up there on a stage in front of almost 900 people under the hot lights and everything. But you have a way of making them feel really at home, and I think that was one of the qualities that you had that made that show endure as long as it does. The second thing is when they start handing out the prizes for the show. This shows the commercial success of Super Circus and of yourself, because as you will see, in addition to selling the sponsors' products, there were a number of Super Circus licensed products, more than you could possibly imagine. I think Super Circus was probably one of the first examples of really successful licensing and merchandising in television. And not only that, but you yourself had a number of products which you licensed, which bore your image. And when we're done with this clip, we'll come back and maybe you can comment on some of the items that are here. And finally, on this clip, there is, I think, what most people remember most about the show, and that is when you would lead, and I think you did this probably twice in every show, once in every half-hour segment, when you got up and led the Super Circus band. So let's, if we could roll this second clip, and this is a little bit longer, again from March 14th of 1954.
Now, boys and girls, it's time to find the lucky boy or girl sitting in our super-duper Super Circus seat. So I see that our super selector is all set in the center of the arena, and in just a moment, we'll have Mary Hartline introduce us to our super spinner, and then we'll know who is sitting in our super-duper Super Circus seat. You all set, Mary?
Right, Claude, we certainly are. And boys and girls, before our Super Circus show today, this young lady right here was picked to be our super spinner. And let's find out what her name is. My goodness, you're a pretty little girl. What's your name?
Mary Catherine Toa.
And how old are you, Mary Catherine? 5. 5 years old. Gee, I see you're looking up there at Claude. Well, are you all ready for your instructions, young lady? Mm-hmm. You are? All right. I know Claude's going to enjoy this.
Say, listen, that Mary Catherine is flirting with me, and you know I can't stand much of that. I'm very susceptible. Look here, sweetheart. Here's our super selector. We've got 2 wheels on it. Both of them are replicas of the famous circus sunburst wagon wheels. Now, when you spin this one, Mary Catherine, you will find the section that the boy or girl is sitting in, and when we spin this one, we find the exact row and seat number.
Right, Claude. And who's ever sitting in that lucky seat will have a chance to win a whole jackpot full of Super Circus prizes. Right, Claude?
You bet, Mary. Now let's check on our clowns and see if they're all set to find the boy or girl. Once we locate the seat, there's Nicky right over there on the left. Cliffy, Sherlock, isn't it? Right over there in the center. And Watson right over there on the right. Okay. All right.
Okay,
Mary
we're all
Catherine,
set.
okay. Now give that a big spin, honey. Atta girl. Oh, who said she didn't have a good right arm? Hey, the wheel's going around, Mary, and in just a moment we'll know the section. There's the Super Seeker out in the audience. It's slowing down, fellas. Stand by. And it's section number 2. Section number 2. All right, we've located the section, Mary Catherine. Now you give this wheel a spin just like that. All right.
There we go.
It's going around. There's the Super Seeker out there again, and in just a moment it'll stop over the exact seat. Here it comes, here it comes. It's seat number 1. How do you like that? Seat number 1. Well, my goodness.
You look kind of surprised. Were you surprised? Yeah. I'll bet you were, too. And what's your name?
Rollin Meats.
How old are you, Rollin?
11.
Are you all ready for our Super Circus question?
Yeah.
All right. Now, think real hard. You all ready, Claude?
Well,
Here
Ronald
we
looks
go.
like he can take care of himself. He is not too nervous. Stand by, young man. If you answer this question correctly, you got a lot of wonderful prizes. Here it is. Which one of our clowns could ordinarily be known as Tubby?
Him? No, wait, him, I mean.
What's his name?
Cliffy.
That's right, Cliffy. Scare there for a minute, didn't he, Mary?
Hey, Rollin, were you a little excited there?
Yeah.
I think so. Well, congratulations for getting the answer correctly, finally. And I know Claude has a whole lot of wonderful prizes for you, and he's going to show them to you right now. All right, Claude?
Yes, I have, Mary. Stand by, Rollin. First of all, we have for you this Super Circus toy set, complete with sideshow, menagerie, big tent, and all the folks who make up the big show. Next, that Super Circus toy television set with a miniature Super Circus show rolling right by the screen. Also, we have for you this wonderful Super Circus Tonavision paint set. You can paint your own portrait of Mary Hartline and the Super Circus gang. Your picture starts with numbers, and the completed portrait looks just like this. Isn't that a beauty? And here's a set of our new Super Circus Mercury Playcraft records featuring the whole gang and set to the swell music of the Super Circus band. And here's the Super Circus whip set, complete with a ringmaster's whip, a majorette's baton, and a cardboard cutout of both a ringmaster's top hat and a sparkling majorette's cap. And finally, here are 2 swell caps from all the gang. Here's a Super Circus cap for boys and a Mary Hartline cap for girls. That's for your girlfriend, both in bright colors, bright circus colors.
Right. And how does it feel to be our winner, Rollin?
Huh?
Kind of speechless?
Yeah.
I believe you are at that.
My brother was going to ask me to win that.
He was?
Yeah.
My goodness, and you did win. That's
Yeah,
he's going to be surprised, isn't
Yeah, I
he?
hope you win that jackpot. And I said I probably wouldn't.
Well, and here you did. Well, then you'll have to share it with him, won't you? And, Claude, I believe we have one more gift to give.
Oh, you bet. Mary Catherine's going to take home this lovely Mary Hartline jacket in white and red, and it has a lovely blue plaid lining inside. Okay, Mary Catherine, darling, thank you so very much for doing a fine job and helping us locate the boy or girl in the super-duper Super Circus seat.
Yes, sirree, boys and girls. And who will be the next to sit in the super-duper Super Circus seat? Will it be you, or you, or you?
Boy, I'm sure glad Rollin won that jackpot. Say, boys and girls, in the current issue of Chicago's own television magazine, TV Today, there's a wonderful story about Super Circus as seen through the eyes of our producer, Phil Patton. Phil tells the trials and tribulations involved in putting on the Super Circus show, and believe me, there are many. You read all about it, won't you, in this week's TV Today. And turn your attention now to our Super Circus bandstand. The fellows look mighty natty today in their Super Circus caps, and ready to give the downbeat is our lovely queen, Miss Mary Hartline. Super Circus Band.
We used to... Later on, this is, I think, one of their first shows because as Mr. Siegel knows, they get bigger, faster and faster. I kept doing the music faster and faster and faster, so this was a little slower than usual because we really pepped up the orchestra there when we... It was very good, though. They were great.
In that clip, Claude Kirshner spoke of the article in the magazine that of the trials and tribulations of putting on a live television show. There must have been some horrendous things that would occasionally go wrong when you're dealing all in live television with acrobats and tumblers, and especially animals who may not have quite a knowledge of the demands of live television.
We had quite a few of those things too. I was talking to Mr. Adele here earlier, and everything was live. Of course, we didn't have the so-called idiot sheets, and we went through that, the teleprompter thing. But all of a sudden, Mr. Siegel out there, the bass drum player, bass viol player, will remember this. We had the big elephants and the rings and everything, and of course the lights, and the Civic Opera was, had a lovely stage and everything, but. Well, this is the first time that this had happened to all of us, but we had everything, like I said, was live, and the elephants decided to perform more ways than one. So, anyway, between all the people there and the air conditioning, they didn't have the air conditioning, the big studios in those days, and in the theaters. So, between the heat and the aroma, I remember Phil Patton comes out hysterical because we were going to do, I think it was a Canada commercial or a Kellogg commercial afterwards, and he said, we'll have to put the orchestra in there first before we do the commercial. So he comes out and he says, Hartline, you get ready because you're going to go out there and do an orchestra number like this. And so I get out there, and here's the stage hands are trying to get rid of all the debris. And I'm sliding around trying to smile, and the feet are going like this, and the white boots were, what they were. Well, we got through it, and people at home didn't know, but we sure knew it there. And then, there's just so many times we had so many interests with. There was Ed Scott, one of our directors at that time. He something was wrong. We had this horse act, and he says, in the director's booth, even hearing the director, cue that horse. He was so upset because the horse was supposed to move, but here's the director, and you'd have to see the whole thing. I didn't want to take up all your time to tell you about this, but everybody becomes so, cue this or cue that animal, and we have Vernon the Vindictive Vulture, and we had all the animals, and so this came from trainers from the zoo out here or someplace, and same place that Marlon Perkins was. So anyway, he brought this big vulture, and there's a tremendous audience out there, and they stretched excuse me for using my hand so much, but they stretched the line or the rope from way to the end of the stage in front, and went all across the stage and all the way up and things, and this vulture was supposed to sit there, and all of a sudden he decided he wasn't going to go there, so he decides, if you know what a vulture sounds like, not much, but when you're sitting Matt always showing this tremendous wing spread. Oh, Vernon, the bending, and he threw all through this. Well, you can imagine if you could see a vulture coming at you across the whole thing. And the director's going crazy, the producer's going crazy, and here's this James having a marvelous time. Well, we finally got him where he was supposed to be. And when you ask me these things, I haven't thought of them in about a while, but there's a million little things like that happen to us.
Well, those things, they happened apparently on a regular basis. I have... Just to refresh your memory, to give you a further example of the kind of things that happened. Variety had an item in the issue of December 19th of 1951, and the headline is "Vaudeville Was Easier," and it says a recent ABC Super Circus telecast provided Phil Patton with 5 reasons why a video producer, no matter how fat his paycheck, is really underpaid. And here's what happened during this one show. During rehearsals, the Coleman Valerie Acro troupe had to be rescued from the high bar by stagehands when their rigging came apart.
Yeah.
Also during rehearsals, Doreen Hustry, a member of the Hollywood Skyrockets, was injured slightly when poked in the eye by a prop. Just before the actual Sunday show, the Backstage was threatened with a flood when the automatic sprinkler system went off. During the show itself, part of one of the acts turned up missing when a bear cub escaped its chain. It was found hiding backstage just before a cue. And during the actual performance, Miss Hustry who cut her leg severely while sliding on a rigging pole, and she was immediately sent to the hospital.
Well, Rick, I remember when you're going through this, I was trying to remember all these things all of a sudden. We always did a clown skit with Cliffy Campbell, Nicky, and I used to be within them on these, and so I just got through with like I say, everything is live here, and you don't have minutes or somebody to cut, and then you tape, and then you do this, so I had to change from the conducting costume, go behind this prop, and the stage girl would come along, and she had to take all my clothes off, put all the other clothes on, and go out for this, and we couldn't get the zipper up on this. I forgot what skit it was. I saw it one day on one of the kinescopes, but then I had to come out with this kind of a dress on or something, some kind of a clown outfit, and we couldn't get the zipper up, and of course the clowns kept ad-libbing and ad-libbing and ad-libbing, and you don't have, and the producer came back to about what have you. So finally we couldn't, so we just pinned it here and here, and I went out, and the band was of course over here. Well, of course I had fortunately my costumes with the ruffles on the duffel, but here's the dress pinned on the front, and I had to go direct stage, and the cameras on everything else, and of course the band's over here having a hallelujah time because there was no back to the dress, and just I was there. And we got through the skit, and I couldn't move too much, or this way or that way, but we just worked all around it, and it was, you say, that was really frightening, though, because it's live. You have no place to go, and you think, oh, if I turn around, this is going to, but I mean, I had under things on the back, but I mean, it still wasn't funny.
Now, in all these years, I'm sorry, did you interrupt?
No, I was just I'm telling myself a joke now because I remember good old Cliffy. I was just having to think about, here he is, and I was supposed to come over and give him something, and instead of coming, I would come like this towards him, like I'd come towards you here, and he kept looking at me, then he thought, well, I was trying to tell him something, so he looks behind me like this, and he goes, oh, well, you don't say. Well, and he kept on with the skit. I remember that, and it was just, well, we ever got through it. Well, we did, but these live things, you just don't have a chance. You're between the world and you, that's it. But anyway, it's hard, you have to be there. I wouldn't give anything up for a live television. Like I say, it's so spontaneous, Like I was saying, what you see is what you get, and if it doesn't go right, you get it anyway, so.
Now, in this great era of live network television in Chicago, as Super Circus progressed over the years, other shows that were identified with that era were falling by the wayside. Garraway at Large came and went. Kukla, Fran and Ollie was cut back from a half hour to 15 minutes. The Hawkins Falls was canceled. Miss Francis finally left the network. And then in September of 1955, here's an item that appeared on the 14th in Herb Lyon's Tower Ticker column in the Tribune. It said, one of the last local TV network shows got the word yesterday. ABC moved Super Circus to New York as of Sunday, November 6th. Mary Hartline, Claude Kirshner et al. Have no idea of their status. This is just about the end for big-time TV in Chicago. Do you remember what happened when they came in and said that the show was being moved to?
Well, quite well, because they called me in. This is an absolute cup. In fact, he wrote it in his column some years ago. And we were really a tremendous success here in Chicago, which we all loved, and our commercial people were happy. But New York thought it would be a good idea. It was doing very well in the ratings and everything. They thought, well, we'd take the show to New York, you see. And this is just telling it as it is. This is not embellishing on anything. And so they called me in, and they said they were going to take the show to New York. And I said, well, I don't know. Have you talked to the rest of the cast? I said, because, you know, they have wives and they have this and that. They said, oh, we're not going to take the rest of the cast. I said, you're not going to take the rest of the cast? I said, that is the show. We are the show. We are all together. And they weren't going to do it, and I didn't go. I wouldn't leave them, and I just didn't go. So they did take the show to New York, and I think they had, I believe, 3 shows they did in New York. And I think Jerry Colonna was put on as the ringmaster, and I don't remember who the rest of the cast or even what they had. But it only lasted about 3 weeks.
They brought in a former Miss America.
I don't even honestly don't remember.
That happened in September when they said they were going to cancel the show. Maybe you remember that George Barnard, your husband, found a provision in your contract that said that the show had to be done in Chicago as long as you were under contract. Well, and they actually had to do the show for 3 more months in Chicago.
It just said I knew I wouldn't go on anyway, but I didn't have to go because the contract said I can do wherever I want to be, but I just wouldn't leave.
Yeah, but that bought the show about 3 more months in Chicago. But literally, when the show got to New York, it bombed almost immediately, notwithstanding Jerry Colonna.
No, but I left in December the 18th, 1958 or something like that. And then I did my Princess Mary Castle, which I love, and Bruce Newton's out here.
Let's get to that show, because they came on the air in the summer of 1957. This is a local show. What had been known as WENR-TV was now WBKB. It was still Channel 7. Tell us a little bit about that show, and then we'll look at at least the opening and a little bit of it.
Well, Bruce Newton, who's out here, which I'm so glad to haven't seen him after all these years, he was a puppeteer and did all the visual effects and things, and we had a great cast. And he did Windy Widget, and I don't know what you'd have to see. It was a cast, and it was a very clean show, and we had a lot of adults, parents watching this show every morning too, because it had a lot of cute things to it, and it was wonderful for children, yet the adults got a kick out of it. And we had I don't know, I can't explain this whole thing, and Ronnie Burns did the voices, and Don Allen was the magician on it, but it was all in a castle, and even all the commercials were put. We did 44 commercials a week on that show, which I thought was rather good.
Let's roll a little bit of
it's hard to explain the show, really.
Once you see what this looks like, you'll have a better idea. And this is probably, I don't have an actual date on this, but it's about 1957.
Here Princess Mary's castle is about to open. With Mary Hartline as Princess Mary.
On the good ship Lollipop, it's a sweet trip to a candy shop.
Where bonbons play on the sunny beach of Peppermint Bay.
Lemonade stand everywhere.
Cracker Jack bands fill the air.
And there you are.
Happy landing on a chocolate bar.
See the sugar bowl do a Tootsie Roll.
With a big bad devil's food cake.
Oh, and if you eat too much, you'll awake
with a tummy ache.
On the good ship Lollipop,
it's a night trip.
Into bed you hop.
With this command,
all aboard for
Candyland.
Tell you what, why don't we play the magic notes that will call the voice in the well? All right? What if he's down with me? You think so? I'll bet he is. Voice far below the ground, tell me of the wish is found.
Oh, Princess Fair, I'm filled with wishes, hardly room for any vision.
Good morning, Mr. Triesnelli. Oh, it's such a beautiful day today out here in the garden, isn't it? Oh, you know, I have a note for you, and like you said, yesterday we just placed the note or the question we want answered from you right in there. Isn't that right? I wonder if he's going to answer it.
Question that is asked of me, am I live or am I tree? Nary one should have to guess. Plainly then, the answer's yes.
Isn't that wonderful, boys and girls? Morning, Cockrell. Oh, you know, I was just saying to Mr. Tree, it's a wonderful day in the garden. It's beautiful and the grass is green, and you take awfully good care of my garden.
Caw, caw. Princess Mary, at the glass you'd better tarry. There you'll find King Costo waiting, for which king we are debating.
Well, I guess we're going to have a visit from the Costo Castle. Well, let's go over to the magic glass and see. Thank you, Cockrell.
Caw, caw.
Linda? Magic glass, so bright and tall. Now the message. Tell us all.
Wendy Widget was a lovable thing. I, to this day, just like to squeeze him because he had a nose, like you see his little nose. Well, now without preaching to children about being honest, or if you're not good and you're not kind, and if you don't tell the truth, that you know something will happen to you. So we don't want to preach to children. So Wendy, for instance, I'll just make some little story like. For instance, he'd come through like that, and he'd say, well, I've been fishing, you have? Oh, yes, I've had a marvelous time or something. And I'd say, well, he says, oh, you should see the fish I caught. Well, how big was it, Wendy? He says, well, and he starts with the little hand, he gets this bigger. Well, when he gets out here, his nose, which is a balloon, gets a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and it blows up, and he keeps getting his hands out. And he was so cute the way you worked him, and the voice and everything. And the nose kept getting bigger. So I said, well, you know what happens when you look at, and he'd go, oh, and then, anyway, to make a long story short, he'd start making, well, maybe it was only this big, maybe it was only that big, and then his nose would go down, and he'd go, oh, he says, I said, you see what happens when you don't quite tell it as it is, or you don't want to say tell the truth or do that, and it was great for children because it, like I say, so many things in there. We had on the walls where, how would you explain it, Bruce? Two heads of knights. One, right, and they were Sir Day and Sir Knight, and one was black and one was silver, and they were up on the big mantle fireplace, and you go in day and night, night and day. Sir Knight's the truth, 'tis time to say, have the boys and girls been good or bad of their something you must tell. I haven't said that in 100 years, but now if he'd work in maybe you should come up and do your little hand. Come up, it'd be fun.
For those who haven't seen you from the front, most people in the room are looking at your back.
Bruce, come up.
Bruce Newton, who worked that show. Stand
Bruce,
up so we can see you.
Be a help, because if you have your hands here, but he, well, on Sir Day and Sir Knight with these heads, and so I'd say have the boys and girls be in. Well, if the Black Knight would open, he said, oh well, the essence of well. Well, not all the boys and girls have been good. There's little Jimmy who didn't do what his mother and father said and go to bed at a certain time, and he said it in good voice. You know, I'm just giving it to you very fast.
And it was the visors that moved, like a mouth.
That's why I wanted you up here to show how that, but the visor would go up and down. They talked and said this, and then the silver one, am I correct, would come in. That was Sir Day, and the other was Sir Knight. But Sir Day'd come and say, just a minute, but there was little Johnny who did what his father said, and remember this. And their parents would write in certain questions for us to say that their children didn't do this. And we wouldn't use their last name, but we'd say, little Joan, and their parents really would all write in. Some of the very good say that we wish you'd have Sir Knight say that this child has not done this, or that he hasn't done that, or she hasn't, and it really worked out. But anyway, that's the main thing. And we had the wishing well, where the children would send in all their letters and what they wished for, and they wished to come on. Then we'd put it down in the well, and we roll it up, and there'd be an answer, and the well itself would pick out something that we were going to give to a child, as I recall. And the magic mirror on the wall, yes.
The tree of knowledge.
The tree of knowledge. Well, why don't you tell about that and keep me from talking too much?
This is your show.
No, I'd prefer if you really would. I sincerely mean that.
Well, the Tree of Knowledge,
You
I'd
have to
be
talk.
inside.
You stand up and tell them, please.
Well, I can turn around. The Tree of Knowledge was a favorite of Mary Hartline's, and I would be in the tree, and the limbs. It was about 8 foot tall, and it cried. Its big mouth moved, and you'd go over, and the Tree of Knowledge would teach you, or the boys and girls, the knowledge. Good knowledge.
Yes. You'd ask the questions. Our boys and girls would send in a certain question, very knowledgeable question, and the tree would answer it, and that was called the Tree of Knowledge. Then we had Call Crow.
Crow.
Yes. And
I'll tell you another one, quickie. 2 years before, lamb chops. Who did lamb chops? Who does? Sherry Lewis. 2 years before, we had a
oh, yeah, you mean Sherry
lamb.
Lewis? Yes, after us.
That's right. And she came on a couple years later, 1960. She took Howdy Doody's spot.
What was the production schedule for that show? How much time would you have to spend on it? What time did you have to get up to do that show?
Oh, I was up every morning at 5 o'clock. I was.
I beat you. I had to get up at 4 because we lived out in the Fox Valley.
Because we did our rehearsing right beforehand. And shall I tell them exactly where we rehearsed?
It's your show.
Where we rehearsed? Well, up on the, what was it, the 21st floor or the 19th floor at the Civic Opera Building. One of the studios were up there where we did the whole thing. It was about a studio this size and everything. Well, we went in and rehearsed in the men's room. This is very early in the morning, and they had the sound effects in there, and so here all the fellows would be the four of you and our producer, our director, Cliff Braun, and we'd all be in the men's room there, and we'd work on all our things in there and then go into the studio. And I don't know why we were there, because it would just worked out better that way, because it had this long counter and everything.
There wasn't anywhere else we could go.
Yeah, we just, at that time of the morning, and we had a lot of fun. It was just marvelous, wasn't it? And Carl Carton did the writing, the children's show programs, and stories. And if you can think of something else, but we did have 44 commercials a week, which was pretty good. And we outbeat, which is not right, we found that in the book a while ago, that when we first started, I believe Arthur Godfrey went on from 9 until 10 then, and we went on from 9:30 to 10. He was CBS, we were ABC, but we outranked him on that. We outranked, it's in the paper, and Liberace was on in that morning, I guess, whatever it was, and some other family program or something. We just found it in the scrapbook yesterday. And so we had a pretty good show.
We all pulled the home show with Arlene Francis, too.
Yeah, that was it. That was the one that I couldn't think of. Was home show was the other one. It was Liberace, Godfrey, and home show. I could think of home, but I couldn't think what it was.
And so that show ran from June of 1957 through, I think, December of 1958.
I can tell you exactly. Well, because that is, I'm the one that, we didn't get fired, they didn't take it off. I hadn't had a day, I didn't take a day off from the studio when I started on radio in 1946 until the end of 58. I didn't take off one day, and not a vacation. And the reason for that, and like on Super Circus, when we went on 12 months of the year, we didn't take a hiatus.
This is the incredible thing. I mean, TV now, but you do maybe 23 shows a year, or 26 shows a year, and that's it. But Super Circus was on every Sunday, 52 weeks a year, from the time it went on the air until the time it went off, and never a break. And because it was done live, there were no reruns.
Well, what happened here, the cast, when we have our summer sponsors, well then, the rest of the cast got 2 weeks off in summer, but I retired. I said, oh, well, good, I'd like to, well, no, you're not going. I said, why can't I? Because the sponsors insist you're here to do the commercials. Do the show. That's why they bought the show. You're going to do the commercials. So that's went on year after year after year. I didn't mind. I loved my work, but then up when the end of 1958, and Bruce knows, I said, I just need to get a day off. And well, it's the truth, remember? And I loved the cast, and the show was just perfect and everything else. But so I went down to Florida for a couple of weeks, and I just never came back. I just, the truth, isn't it? But that we never we left at the top. But I thought it was time after 15 years to take a day off. Just have to.
So you were off the air, but these various artifacts of your career on the air remain, and some of them are sitting over on the table here. Do you want to go over and talk about some of those, and maybe we should give you
there's just a few. Oh, excuse me.
Maybe we should give her the wireless hand mic so that we can
Well,
get the sound here.
Project, perhaps. Thanks, Terry. Well, this is called, I had the Mary Hartline Enterprises, which had, well, there are 36 different items, but when Carrie asked me if I'd bring up Mr. Dumont, I said, oh, I had to find these even, and I'll have to talk real loud. Okay. Now, well, this is a Mary Hartline doll. They did it in 3 sizes, one this size, and one larger. And then this was one of our sponsors of Snickers and Milky Way. And, of course, the only reason I brought just a few things I could bring up on the plane this time. So there's not really a lot of things here, but I did have, they have the Mary Hartline boots, and even has the heart and the line on the bottom. And had all kinds of children's clothes and bracelets and, you know, just things that, all kind of enterprise things that you see on the market today. And I'm the one who chose, oh, you have one? Yeah, you're, all right.
I was at Super Circus in 1950.
You know, sir, I'm telling you, know, it's very cute. Isn't that something? I tell you, you keep that because I don't like to talk this long. And but there was that when I went in Southern Illinois, which I've been recently because I have a 93-year-old mother who was the light of my life, and she's not too well. So I was down in Southern Illinois. I'm still there so she lives in Barrington, and she wrote me. I don't know how she found I was there. And she collects, and she has from the day all the dolls and all the enterprise started off, and she's been collecting them ever since. And she said that, well, this comes out wrong, but it cost a lot of money. And she went to auction and just paid it. I told you you'd put it home and put it in the vault. It's the truth.
I sleep with it every day.
No, but I'm sincere. I don't like to talk about money. But, well, if you, I'm glad to hear that. But, you know, it really is the truth that people try to find them places in auctions, and it's worth a lot, so you keep it. And funny part of it is my sister had one this size of the larger one in her living room. And anyway, it was stolen right out of her own living room with somebody that couldn't get one, so they just took hers. And then this was pretty recently. But Ideal did the doll, and I never had an agent. Sometimes I think about, probably should have, but all the time I did radio or television, I never had an agent or a public relation person. It just worked out that way. So the point I'm trying to make is that when I went to New York, I picked out whether it's F&B and Madame Alexander and Ideal Toy were interested in doing the Hartline doll. Well, I picked Ideal because I thought they were really good, and they were good. And they also do the Shirley Temple doll. But I could answer questions for you. And like I say, we had great sponsors. Like they were just like family to us. And I would just like to answer any questions you'd like to know. I'll think of more things that I think you might be interested in when I get home. I'll sit there and think, oh, they would have got a kick out of that. But I'm just trying to, maybe you can help along here. There's another great director that we had too on Super Circus, which first started out. And that was Greg Garrison. And I'm sure you all know him because he went on to California, did all of Dean Martin's shows. So, in fact, he was on. I just saw him the other night. In fact, I talked to him. He called me about 3 or 4 months ago, and there's a big biography on Dean Martin, and he was narrating on it about that. And there's been our Chicago is a great place to be because person is just great. I just feel at home here, and people always say, oh, are you from New York or here? There, I said, no, I'm in Chicago. I actually was born in Hillsborough, Illinois, which I always say that first, but this is really, I've been here, was here from, I was 16 on.
Does anybody have any questions that they might want to ask about that
But
time?
I'll be glad to do whatever I can here. This is easy to do. Thank you. Okay. Rambling on here. I've never talked so much. You're having more fun? Yes. I could tell you a lot of things. I just can't remember.
Ms. Hartline, I was on your show in 1950. I wrote a letter to you and said, can I be on your show? And I won the prize. And being on your show was a great thrill. I won a Hop Along Cassidy radio. And I wish I still had it. I don't know where it went. Some garage sale.
I
I'm
wish I
sure.
had it too.
But it's
Yeah.
great seeing you here, and I'll never forget that day.
Isn't that kind? That's very kind. You know, talking to...
It's amazing the number of people who I run into who will tell me that they had the Mary Hartline dolls,
Yes.
and women now who are of a certain age who as children would say, "Oh, I wanted so much to be like Mary Hartline," and some of them actually were in broadcasting now too.
You know, you're talking about, maybe if it doesn't get too tiresome here, just us talking here, is that one thing that did happen when I'd make personal appearances for all my merchandise, and I remember Lit Brothers in Philadelphia. It's all this is written. This is everything I'm telling you. You can see that in all the scrapbooks, which are authentic papers, and that was. So I made a personal appearance there, and they had it. It's like a Marshall Field Lit Brothers in Philadelphia, but this was on the dolls and everything, and the merchandise were on the second floor. Well, there was 11,000 people that came to see it. When you were talking about people that and they had all these people, and they were all trying to get up on the second floor to, you'd autograph things like that, and the floor started to go down, and they had to have the fire department and the police department, and the floor was sagging, and to this day, I can't get into a real big crowd because everybody kept over and started to grab at you. It was just thinking of strange things that happened that just happened to come into my mind. That's worse than the elephant, So, but when these things just come to you, when they come to me, I just tell you because I think you might amuse you or something.
Mary, you did commercials always live. Did you at any time blow a commercial?
No, I'd be honestly truthful with you. I not to my knowledge I ever did. I just woodshedded all the time. I just really worked on them. But I remember one time that this young boy, our cast always did that's Sig Satkowitz back there, hi Sig. And so there was a young little boy who was doing a Peter Pan peanut butter commercial. And this is before Mike Wallace came on our show, and he did Peter Pan peanut butter's commercial. He just came onto the side show as a barker and did that. But prior to him, after him, there's a little boy, and so he's standing on the stage, and it was hot, and there's all people there and everything. Of course, those lights in those days were just tremendous. And so he takes a bite of it. Peanut butter sandwich, and it never gets, and it's not gooey, it's not this, and it was so hot. It wasn't the little boy's fault. He talked about the peanut butter, and the crunchiness and the smoothness. With that, he takes a bite, and it just kept going. And it kept going. And just like this, I can see to this day, and the director and producer in their cage, they're going, and the sponsor was there, his name was, I can still see him, I can think of it in a minute. He came out, and he says, do something. Well, this is live television, the poor kid's going, and the peanut butter, because of the heat's going like that. I can't see peanut butter to this day that I don't think about that. But these are things, like you say, on commercials said, but we always, and then they used to give me great ones where, remember, it was a Raisin Bran, Kellogg's Raisin Bran. It was done, maybe Mr. Siegel will remember this because Rulo, he was a drummer. He would do the drum to this, and I had to pour the Raisin Bran and the milk and talk about how many raisins are in here and how much milk is in there, and the drums are going with, you have to do it all by beat, and I was doing it all by the beat, the thing and the music. That was difficult. I don't know whether you remember that. We came through that like grease, but practice. I did that in my sleep, but we didn't miss a beat, but that was difficult. It's, the music and the drums and the this, and try to do a commercial and then pick it up and drink and keep talking to the drums and beat. We had difficult commercials, but somehow we made it. I ran over a thing the other day, which I don't know, you were all maybe young enough to know then when we had the barge come down I'm just going from one subject to another in case you might be interested, coming down the river here.
This was at Christmas time, I think.
Yeah. And
maybe Christmas of 1949 or 50. The Super Circus cast got on a barge to go down the river to greet Santa Claus as he arrived in the city, who for some reason came by water.
We had we had Bob Hope with us, and I ran over the picture that it was Bob Hope and a whole cast, and we had the whole orchestra on there, and we're bringing Santa Claus, we're bringing him down. I gave him to Kerry O'Delly. There's the picture, he put it in the archives here, And Bob Hope was out there, and he had had all these cold. It was about 10 below zero, and we were coming down the river and going to end up at the Merchandise Mart. But we were going to let Santa Claus off. We went through the opening, excuse me for using my hands, opening from the docks up here to come through past the Wrigley Building and down the waterway, and at the State Street. Oh, and the crowds, you talk about crowds, the picture show, they were just lined up and down wherever the parking part is there, and just looked like just thousands of people, and it was cold. And I can remember because I wore my costume, and of course all the rest of the cast put their long underwear under their pants and everything else. But I remember it was about 4 hours we were out there from the time we started, because it was very slow down and got off at the Civic Opera Building because we went into a rehearsal. And I still had goosebumps on my goosebumps because I wore the costume. I said, if your people and the fans the children up there on those decks and every place want to see you wear, then I'm going to wear that uniform, and I'm not going to put a coat on. But it was cold. But those were days that were fun too. And Bob Hope, I'm so glad I ran over there the other day. And I also have the tape that they did from it, which if it hadn't been for Carrie O'Dell and all this, I would never, and Mr. Dumont, I would never think of finding these things even. So I found that, and he has it now in his power here.
Yeah, I remember the caption of that picture. Bob Hope was wearing an overcoat, looks over at you wearing next to nothing, and the caption of the picture was, "That lady must have steam heat," I think.
So we just had a lot of, we just been all over and done so many good things, and even one of the nice parade that I always liked too, and this is so strange about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, watching something that was in Florida, and I thought, what in the world? And I saw just an episode of myself and Claude and something about Super Circus. It was the Bud Billigan Parade, that they had, and they had it on something, and this was just recently, but then I saw it, or somebody else had told me they had seen it, so we did that parade too, which was always quite good down on the south side, the Billy. We had a lot of fun every place we were.
Do we have any other people out there who have any questions or memories or confessions that they want to make?
I was just wondering, I didn't realize until this week that Mary Hartline was your real name, and I always thought that you took it from what was put on your costume when I was a child. I was wondering who came up with the idea.
Well, this is very strange. I hate to talk. I seem like I'm just rattling on, But anyway, the answer to that was that one day we were up, my mother and father were with me someplace. I don't know, doing a personal appearance, and they'd flown in for it just to be with me. And this nice lady, I was signing an autograph for it, and somehow I said, this is my mother and father, Mr. and Mrs. Hartline. And this nice little old lady looks up at my father and says, I think it's so nice, sir, that you changed your name to hers. My father says, I beg your pardon. Well, my father was born Paul Tobias Hartline, and that is his name. And the funny part about that, but I always laugh about that, change your, I can still see his face. And he was a wonderful person. But there was something else I was going to tell you there, and I got thinking about him, and when I first started in the radio, and then stuff, this goes way back, and they were saying, I'm sure the lady back there will remember, and they were saying the Hartline name might be long or something, because someday this is when I was very young, they said, someday your name will be up on our key, we know it's going to be up on, and that name Hartline is just too long. Well, so it was just starting out, then I thought, I won't, probably the lady will outlive me, or something, so I said, or my career, so I said, no, I couldn't do that because my father and mother and my grandmother, I just can't do that. So the wonderful part was that I stuck by using my name, just Mary Hartline, and so when they decided to do the enterprise things, I just thought, the heart, the line, and Mary, and it was a Hartline, that was the signature for all the things, and I also used that for when I had a yacht in Palm Beach. I named that after my father too. It was named the Hartline because there was the Cunard line, the Fuji line. This is the Hartline, you see. So it
come out with dolls again. I think you have a market for them. I really.
Well, these people ladies and people who, like I said, started saying Barrington around, and another place down in Southern Illinois. I've gotten wonderful letters from them. And they collect the dolls, and several people have called me. Well, I say several, quite a few people have, really. And that wanted to know if I had dolls or I could get them. And I said, listen, I wish I hadn't. I think that Mr. DuPont and Carey has my last one here, except, so one lady said, I'm just going to write the idea and see if we can't do something. And I said, well, I'd appreciate it, and not everybody keep writing me and wondering why I can't give them one or something, you know.
Barbie a run for her money.
Yeah. So,
any other questions out there that may want to come up? Let me just ask you before we close, when you look at television today, do you see or do you believe that we have lost anything at all in terms of spirit or content or anything else from the time when you were involved in the business?
well, Rick, you know, I think everybody's doing really a good job on television. The thing that I think that I particularly miss when you had live television, like it was wonderful people like Imogene Coco and Milton Berle and Dave Garroway and everybody and Kukla Fran Nolly. It was just, you know, people I think at home felt like they knew you, and you felt like when you went out, you felt like, you know, they're just family. You knew your fans and you loved them. I don't think you see that so much today, perhaps. I think maybe it's kind of hard to explain. I think it's not as like, remember the Playhouse, or what was the name of the Montgomery Playhouse?
Playhouse 90 and Robert Montgomery Presents, I think.
Or something, all those playhouses and things like that, live theater and stuff like that, except on television. It's all kind of, well, it's kind of lost me someplace because I think it's a little bit too much risque on it. I think that's about the easiest way of putting it. I think there's a lot of things on there that need to be not there. It's hard to explain it. I think everybody understands what I'm saying, but I think the liveness and like Jack Parr, and remember, Bruce, we used to all laugh about, we rehearsed it one day, one of the cast came in and said, oh, have you heard, was it Jack Parr or Carson? Which one? I don't know which one, but that's when that all started out. We were talking about that's how far it goes back, and he just started on it. Remember Jack Parr, how fabulous he was, and you don't have people like you have the talk shows like Carson was very good, except that like John and the rest of them, they're just not like Parr. Do you think?
Well,
I don't know. If everybody has to each their own, I guess. But what? I'm having shots.
You know, there was a certain, I think, again, the spontaneity that came about because you were really inventing the medium, and you didn't have anyone you could really follow. I mean, the theory in Chicago was that television was television, that it wasn't the stage and it wasn't the film, and it had to be something unique. And for a time in Chicago, I think that theory was put into practice with very, very good results. Although ultimately, I think when the business moved away from Chicago, some of that spirit was lost, and maybe some of the really good stuff of television too. But do you miss at all the grind of working 7 days a week?
No, I loved every bit of it, because I've loved every bit of my life, everything I've done. I think when you get back here like it is now, I think, oh, it might be fun to do something, you know what I mean, just in the business. I don't mean get out the tights like, you know, Betty Boop or something like that, but just to be back in and do something. It might be fun, you know, just being around people again. It'd be very, very nice.
What is it like to come back to Chicago after such a long time?
Oh, I love it. I feel just like I'm at home, and I was talking to Madeline here, who's with the museum here today, and I'm staying just the short time at the Drake, and I said, well, I live right north of Drake Towers there, and right along in there, so I feel like I'm really at home, and it's just wonderful, and I just know every inch of it. It's changed, but it hasn't changed.
Well, let me thank you on behalf of the museum for coming up here, and let remind you again that what you see here is really someone who contributed something quite valuable and meaningful to our medium. I think this is something that I learned as a viewer at the age of beginning at about age 9 and up to about age 13. And something I think I've come to appreciate even more as someone who works in the business today, which has changed a great deal. We don't do these elaborate live shows anymore. And there was no show that emanated in Chicago in the network days that was more elaborate than Super Circus. There were other shows that may have had, in the eyes of the critics, more artistic merit. But there was never a show that involved quite the technical, directorial problems that Super Circus did. And the people who did that show are people that I think those of us who do it now really stand in awe of. And thank you very much for coming up and sharing.
I want to say one thing, though, because in advance I have been, people say, well, what happened to all this? And I was married to Woolworth Donnie, who was the very love of my life, too, that I have been a widow now for 24 years. So people keep asking me that question, so I thought I'd just tell it right out now before somebody asks me. But Woolworth died about going on 24 years ago. So right now it seems like it's about time to get out and, come to Chicago.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank you all.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.